I will call this meeting to order. It is 6:32. This is Monday, February 1st, 2021. We are joining virtually via live stream. And I call this meeting to order and would look for a motion to consider and adopt the agenda with one noted change, that the consideration for request to speak on an agenda item would come after the one and only action item, which is a presentation on the consideration of learning model transition. I thought that we could have the presentation, then we can have the public input. We have a couple of speakers that wish to speak to the board on that agenda item, and then we can have discussion. If that sounds amenable to folks, would take a motion.
Dixon, noting the adjustment to the agenda this evening, I move to approve.
Thank you.
Stewie will second.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will do roll call as is our tradition with these virtual meetings. Tim?
Lokenskart, aye.
Vicky?
Hager, aye.
Drew?
Dixon, aye.
Bill?
Soderlund, aye.
Tracy?
Stewie, aye.
John?
Carlson, aye.
Leonard, aye. Motion carries unanimously. Superintendent Gronseth, do you want to start with the presentation?
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Sarah, could you enable screen sharing, please?
You want to tell me how you do that?
It should be on the bottom choice under more.
Can you do it now?
Yes. There we go. As we've spoken before about this, there have been some changes, obviously, since the last time we got together. The last time we talked about COVID, we had made a decision to bring our pre-K through 4 students back in person. We have done that, and we are starting the 3rd week of that. And that has been going well. We have not had any close contacts that have caused widespread quarantines. I know one of the things that we had talked about was that if we had close contacts at the elementary, it would be likely that entire classrooms would need to go to quarantine. We've had a few times that we thought that might happen, but we haven't had to do that so far. The middle and high school have returned to hybrid learning. That is going well. And again, we've had a few cases in the middle and high school, but have not had close contacts during the school day. And activities have resumed. It has been fun to cheer on the Saints once again. I've made it up to some of our matches, and we've had a lot of fun cheering everyone on, and the spectators have been also following those protocols, keeping their distance and wearing their masks, and our athletes have been following the protocols as well. And during the activities themselves, we haven't seen close contacts, but we have had close contacts associated with activities, mostly from the transportation side of that. So that is something that we're trying to work on to avoid. And then another new thing is that vaccinations have begun. The state ran 2 weeks of a pilot where we've been able to have about 60 of our staff start that vaccination process. Some of them should be coming up on their second dose here. That's about 20% of our staff overall. However, there have been changes that have been made to that process. And so the state is handling that on their side. And then today, we learned that the county is also going to be running their own process of vaccination. So staff had the opportunity to sign up on a waiting list, more or less, for both the state and the county. And whichever one comes up first, staff can take advantage of that opportunity. We don't know how many vaccines there will be or when they will be available. And so we don't have a good way of predicting when more of our staff would be vaccinated. We just have to seize those opportunities when they come around. There are requirements, of course. There continue to be requirements that we need to follow from the state. One of them is that the regional support team must be consulted and approve of any changes for middle and high schools. And we need to provide at least 2 days of planning prior to a learning model change. That's understandable with all of the changes that would need to happen, everything from planning for instruction for both in-person and distance learning, as well as furniture changes or any protocol changes that we need to prepare for. And masks are still required in all district buildings and for all district events, and shields are recommended. I know when we met last, shields were a requirement, and that has shifted to being highly recommended. Quarantines for close contacts are still in process, of course. MDH guidelines define what those close contacts are, and they really handle that process. We do help them in that process, but they really are the ones making those determinations, and quarantines are still 14 days as recommended by the Department of Health. And our students have assigned seating on buses and in classrooms to keep control of those close contacts as well. And then it is recommended for in-person, if we're bringing all students back, that students be at least 3 feet apart. MDH prefers, that's Department of Health, sorry. Department of Health does prefer 6 feet apart, but if that's not possible, at least 3 feet. And then distance learning must continue to be an option. We do have 264 students currently who are choosing full-time distance learning. So that is about 12% of our overall population. Let's really focus more on the upper grades and middle and high school, with 17% of the high school currently being in distance learning. Taking a look at county COVID data, the trends have really kind of gone up and down over the last few weeks and from day to day. And I have the numbers listed there. The current numbers for Nicollet County being 34.63. And then when we talk about that current but unofficial number, the official number represents 2 weeks prior. And that allows time for the Department of Health to make any adjustments for where people live, or changing if there were different tests, if there were any false positives or false negatives, they can make their adjustments. And so the current but unofficial number is what it is today, knowing that in 2 weeks, when that's posted as the official number, it may be adjusted up and down for for any of those changes that they see. And so you can see that the official number for Nicollet at 34.63 and the current number is 28. That is the direction we want to see those numbers going. The Seward County 38.24 with a current of 35, Blue Earth County 38.75 and 23.1 for a current. You can see in those official numbers over the last 3 weeks that there is some variation, and we'll be continuing to watch those. We really want to see them continue in a downward trend the way that they're going right now. And then in the St. Peter schools, and I just updated this today with current data, and we currently have 2 positive cases in the district and 25 quarantines due to close contacts. So over the past couple of weeks, we've really been delving into the possibility of bringing our students back in, our middle and high school students in for in-person learning. And it has really been a complex discussion with many things to consider. We had some priorities as we started. First and foremost, the health and safety of our students and staff in a pandemic environment, and then making sure that we follow all state guidelines in response to COVID, and then really prioritizing in-person learning for our youngest learners. We've done that by bringing in our pre-K through 4 for in-person learning. And then we're looking to transition all of our students to in-person learning. And there were many things to consider as we did this. First was our ability to maintain cohorts throughout the school day. That's really why our younger grades are able to do that. In elementary school, it's much more common for students to come in. They spend the majority of their time in one room. And when they do leave that room, they all go together from place to place. And so that cohort is maintained throughout the day. With 5th and 6th grade, this is more possible. However, they still do travel throughout the day, and they have 2 periods during the day. They're advisory and Saints time, where those cohorts completely mix. They also have interventionists throughout the day, where students from different classes are coming together to receive specialized services. So we do see more of a mix of students at the middle school, even in 5th and 6th grade. And then we had to consider our ability to maintain that 3 feet of space that is the state guideline or the Department of Health guideline. And again, they'd prefer 6 feet, but we're looking for 3 feet. And our teachers, I really have to applaud their efforts on this. They really looked into this. They brought desks into some of our classrooms, and they got out the yardstick, and they were measuring and considering the higher class sizes at the middle school and the smaller size of our classrooms. It wasn't going to be possible to keep our students that minimum of 3 feet apart throughout the day. And so we'd end up with quite a few more close contacts because of that. And that was one of the things that really became a hurdle for us. And we had looked at bigger spaces in the building. The challenge is there are 12 sections of 5th and 6th grade, say, and we only have a few of those larger spaces. And if you use those larger spaces, then we'd have to cancel the classes that were in those spaces, like arts, music, physical education. And then the vaccination rate, we also wanted to take into consideration. We are hopeful that we'll continue to get more of our staff vaccinated. There have been, as I mentioned, some changes and delays in that process, and we're unsure of when vaccination will be more widely available, so that all of our staff who would choose to receive the vaccination would have that opportunity to be offered. And then we also want to listen to our staff, our teachers, our paras, our bus drivers, to make sure that we're not missing anything along the way. And some concerns were shared by staff members, and so we have adjusted some of our recommendations from our original plan. And that is exactly why we seek everyone's input, so that we can all move forward in a way that we can support. Well, before I go into that, I just happened to see Keith here, and I talking about staff input. We have Keith Hansen here, we have Jake Maltz here from the middle school, we have Angie Fogel here representing paraprofessionals. And Keith, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share from our teachers' perspective how you see this situation. You'll have to unmute though, Keith.
Am I working now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there it goes. Good. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. You know, we had some great conversations last week from the staff. I think school board members, thank you. I believe Jake sent out an email kind of listing some of the staff concerns, because, you know, we want to get this thing done right. We want to do it the St. Peter way. We want to get back to school. But like we said, we want it done right. Safety, you know, the first one that he said, safety for our students and our staff. And that's kind of the big one. You know, so we worked on a plan that'll help us, you know, take some of these considerations and be able to work out some scenarios and make things work for us in the building to come back with the timeline that Mr. Grunseth is going to present here soon.
And Jake, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that from the middle school perspective, or anything else?
Just a couple things. A lot of the things you've already talked about in our classrooms. We've set up some pilot rooms with some tables and desks, and to keep that 3 feet apart is near impossible. I know that they've talked about putting some plastic dividers in between students, but there's also some hurdles with that. People in the back have to look through, you know, 4 different layers of clear plastic, and where the kids sit, the plastic might not go all the way back to where they're sitting. So there's some things that we need some time to kind of figure out to address some of these main concerns so that we can come back safe.
And I did have an opportunity to visit with Angie a bit. Angie, do you want to share from the perspective of paraprofessionals?
Sure. Yesterday, I was able to reach out to quite a few of the paras in a lot of the buildings here in the district. It sounds like the buildings with the youngers that are already back in full, it sounds like that's going really well. From their perspective, it sounds like morale is high and everybody feels safe and everybody feels like it's going really well. The upper buildings, the opinions are kind of split down the middle. We have some staff that feel that they're concerned a little bit about the flipping and flopping. They feel, what if there's a big outbreak in the building and we have to go back again? They're concerned at what that would look like for the students. They want to make sure that, I had a couple people talk about how making sure that we're even not getting relaxed in any of our safety protocols now. Those of us that are working in the classroom, we find ourselves wandering around the classroom and just being very mindful as it is now. And just making sure that if we are to go back in full, that maintains. And then the other half really feel there's a large group of people ready to get going again, get the kids back in the building. They feel comfortable working in full classrooms, whatever that looks like. Ready to flex wherever we're needed. I think there's some talk, a lot of us are talking about, our concerns for the seniors, specifically, obviously in the high school building. Some of us watched those seniors last year. They lost everything in the blink of an eye. And so that was really hard to watch. It's hard for me, obviously, to comment. I have skin in the game. So take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, there's just concern on watching these older kids not able to close out the things that they developmentally need to close out in order to move on into adulthood as young adults. One thing that was expressed is that we really love that Friday to get kids caught up and have an opportunity to meet and speak with any students that are in distance learning. We've already seen a really great turnout from that, grades wise and mental health wise. That was one of the issues that came up in conversation, is that we've had notable mental health crises in our buildings. And so we know that them being out of our sight, even as is causing an uptick in behaviors and other mental health issues. So that Friday really does help when we just need to get eyes on the students. To flex, nobody was like, everybody had opinions, but I think at the end of the day, we're all here to be wherever you need us to be and whatever that support looks like. We're used to flexing. We're trained to flex. So whatever that looks like long term.
Oops. Thank you, Angie. All right. So our recommendations, to continue, obviously, our pre-K through grade 4 and in person, and then consider bringing our middle and high school back on March 22nd. And I put that date out there softly. It's really a tentative date. If COVID-19 data or vaccination data indicates that we could come back sooner, we could certainly call a meeting and be really excited about sharing the possibility of bringing part or all of our students back sooner than that. However, at this time, given the information that we have, we feel that March 22nd is the date that we would target as coming back for all students in person. That is the first day of the 4th quarter. And we have all of our principals here with us this evening as well. And I'd like to provide an opportunity for them to provide some insight on this date and why this date and any of the other aspects of what's been talked about so far. So do we want to start with the high school with Annette, please?
Sure, I can speak to those high school dates and some of the thinking behind that if you're not living in the high school world, you're not necessarily thinking of. One of the ideas that we were floating around was starting with 2 grade levels and bringing them back a little bit earlier. At the high school, especially, the majority of our classes are mixed grade level. And so we couldn't quite wrap our minds around how to just bring back some kids all in while others were still hybrid. Teachers would be having some kids all in every day, some kids there half the time, some kids not there half the time, as well as having a certain number of kids who are all distance. So that was hard to try to just sort out. We didn't know how big a difference it would mean for those kids to have them all back in, other than for social purposes, because at the high school anyway, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of our teachers have organized their classes so they're flipped every other day, and we would have kids then in 4 different learning models. We also took a look at our school calendar And with fourth quarter starting on March 22nd, we would love to have everybody back for fourth quarter. Especially giving, like Angie talked about, our seniors, giving our seniors their fourth quarter, and having that opportunity to connect in person with kids in all grade levels would be fantastic. As Mr. Gronseth pointed out, that also, hopefully if the vaccination rollout continues, that would give all people who are interested in getting that vaccination the opportunity to hopefully have both vaccinations by that time, as well as that week after the second one, to be fully vaccinated and ready to roll for kids to be all in fourth quarter. I can speak for, I think the majority of the teachers are pretty comfortable with that plan. You know, even if they're not necessarily comfortable being back all in right now, I think that March 22nd date calmed some nerves. And also, I know I can speak for everybody who works up here. We're dying to get all kids in. Like that's why we're here. We just have to make sure that we're safe about it. And we hope that fourth quarter gives us enough time to connect with kids, and get them through their year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
John Graff, do you have more to add from the middle school perspective?
Yeah, I just kind of want to touch upon a couple of the aspects that were already discussed. You know, at the middle school, our biggest constraint is our space. We have relatively small classrooms, and our class sizes range anywhere from 28 to 32, and some of our upper levels. And we put those pilot classrooms together last week. We couldn't come up with desk configurations that would allow for the 3 feet distance between students. And like Jake said, we do have plastic dividers that we've used tentatively to see how that would work. And it really became a visual and a sight impairment for students in the back. So we just haven't come up with a solution to that quite yet. And, you know, the middle school, we really built it on this idea of collaboration. So over the last few years, when we get new furniture, the furniture we've been getting are tables. And with those tables, students are you know, almost elbow to elbow, and that really creates that constraint. And the other constraint is that 6 feet separation between student and adult. With the class sizes the way they are and our classroom spaces the way they are, if we are able to keep with a full classroom, it would really necessitate a stand and deliver model, which is something that we're nervous about because it's not something that we want to do. So it's really thinking through what costs are there to bringing all the students back versus those benefits, and having time to figure out solutions to make it work.
Thank you. And Chris Overbro, did you want to speak on Hoffman Learning Center?
Just briefly, we do share staff with the high school, and we work closely with the Leo A. Hoffman Center to coordinate what is going to be best for those students. And when looking at the different options, I think it makes the most sense for us to transition with both the middle and the high school. And that will give us the time for our faculty to hopefully become vaccinated as well, and spread those students out.
Thank you. And I know that our elementaries have been all in. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that, Jareen or Darren or Atif.
I think just that it continues to go very well. You know, the kudos to the staff, because their safety protocols, they're just part of what they do. And it's amazing just to watch them go through their routines, and just disinfecting and keeping kids at a distance is now just part of what we're doing throughout our day. It's going well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. At North, we're pretty lucky to have large homerooms, along with the model that we have, like Mr. Grunseth mentioned, keeping kids together in homerooms and traveling as kind of, we call them just family units. That along with just extra space around the cafeteria, and we're utilizing a couple satellite spaces for extra lunchroom areas at the STEM room and the art room. That's helped a lot too for us to continue offering the same structure with our specialty areas and still providing for a lot of space in between students. So it's been going well, like I said, but a huge piece of that is just the square footage that we have in our buildings.
I would agree. Certainly preschool is in going full on, and our little preschoolers, it is hard to distance. We do our best with that, but the cleaning routines that we have in place and those protocols, people are sticking by those. And again, the staff has done a great job just ensuring that that's done to the best of our ability throughout the day. We have had students needing to quarantine, even within the last few weeks that we've been back, but we'll work through that as well.
Thank you. Whoops. So we have received a few questions, and we tried to answer some of those. The most common question, one, are these dates solid? And I think I shared that we would certainly be open to coming back sooner if the situation changed. But then again, if things go the other way, we may have to delay that too, depending on how things go. Given news of new variants that are more contagious, we are hesitant, but that is a target date that we have. Can we do this sooner? I think I talked about that. And then will Saints Overtime continue? It will continue to be available before and after school, and then on those early release days as well, on Fridays. Will distance learning still be available? Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, we currently have 264 students choosing full-time distance learning, and we are still working closely with those families as well. And then I also spoke to the bigger rooms for classes earlier too. That is one of the questions that came up quite a bit. And so the trade-off is not having the classes that are usually in there. And then I also, whoops, sorry about that. People were wondering what districts around us were doing. And I do meet regularly with area superintendents in different groups. And it really is a mix, and it's based on each community. It's based on their building sizes, the space that they have available, and really the COVID data for those specific communities. We have everything from everybody in distance learning to everybody all in. I would say that the majority of our surrounding districts are a combination with a focus on having earliest learners, so those pre-K through fourth grade students in person more often, and having hybrid or distance in the upper grades more often. I have included in this from conversations with superintendents what their plans are, or at least their tentative plans are in parentheses after each of those school districts. And they too are watching COVID data. I know their plans change as well. Mankato had planned to bring students into hybrid sooner, and they recently delayed that until the 16th so they could watch that COVID data a little bit more, and that they'll be revisiting their decision coming up here soon too, to make some final decisions based on that. And with that, that concludes the presentation portion. Chair Leonard, I don't know if you wanted to go to public comment and then have discussion, or if you wanted to, I'll follow your lead.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I would prefer, we do have both of the individuals that asked to speak before the board in the meeting and ready, and I think it's an appropriate time. I just also, before we do that, wanted to acknowledge, thank you to our staff that spoke tonight. I really appreciate it. It's good to hear from you. And, you know, I just want to make it clear that we have bargaining groups that we didn't hear from tonight, but we are in contact with them. And we heard a lot of nice things about the custodial crews and how they're really stepping up. And I know our other bargaining units are as well. So I don't want anyone to think that we aren't considering all of our staff in our plans. With that, I will turn to our guests. Bill Weber has asked to speak. And so Bill, we'll give you 3 minutes or so, and we'll listen. And then we'll go to our next speaker, and then we'll go to our discussion. So with that, Bill, welcome.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you great.
Cool. Well, I've just got a series of questions here for the school board or the superintendent. And some of them are very short answers, I hope. But I mean, so right now, how many positive districts or how many positive cases are in the district? I think you said 2 out of 2,300 some student and staff, correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Bill, I think the way that we typically do these is we don't actually have a conversation back and forth, but we hear what you have to say, and then we can discuss afterwards. So I don't know if you want us to.
Well, then just write down my questions and
Sure.
please answer them.
Can do that.
Do you believe we will ever see our numbers below the arbitrary statewide guidelines this school year? If space is the issue, how will we ever be able to bring our students back this year? Will we somehow have more space to put everybody 3 feet apart on March 22nd? And I would ask the school board, for our students' sake, will the board please consider rejecting this plan and requesting a faster timeline to get all students back in school? We have to at least give it a try. These kids have been through enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your input tonight. And I have written down those questions, and I think we can tackle some of that in discussion. Kelsey Hutchins is with us as well. Kelsey, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate, and I'm going to kind of speak to some different viewpoints than what Bill had shared. Not saying that his inputs are any less valid. I feel like everybody has kind of different opinions on this. So I'm a teacher and I'm a parent. I have kids at both the high school and the middle school. And then I teach special ed high school students. And I do agree that we want all kids back. The kids just perform better. It's less work for teachers because we do put in a lot of extra time when we're having to figure out everything online and different groups and everything. So it has taken a lot of time away from teachers as well and their families trying to prepare for all of this. So we would love to have everybody there. But I've also talked to some other parents, and I talked to my students, and I've talked to some of the other teachers, and I've come across a few more concerns as far as coming back at all before the end of the school year. And so some of the things that have come up were like worries about busing space. Right now we have the buses split And if we're going to have all the grade levels going back, that means all the kids on buses at the same time. So that would be a concern. Also, obviously, the space. Like I said, I have a son at the middle school, and hearing everything tonight, especially, I have concerns about keeping the kids spaced enough. I have worked in multiple different districts. My job at MVED, I get to go to all 7 of the school districts that surround us, and some of them have stayed full on, some have, switched back and forth between hybrid, distance learning. But the main thing that they've been able to maintain across all those districts is, the ones that have been successful staying in school have the space, or they have the ability to, kind of keep kids in cohorts, like what Bill was talking about. And so I'm worried about our ability to do that. I understand that, the vaccine is coming out and we're focusing on getting teachers vaccinated, which I think is great, as a protective, we're trying to do something there. But at the same time, we still don't know how effective those vaccines are entirely. They haven't been around very long. Side effects seem to be mild, but then I've also talked to people with, some more severe side effects and having to stay home from work, which isn't necessarily helping that situation in the short term. But I'm more worried about, great, we vaccinate the teachers, but we're not vaccinating all the students. And the students are going to be the ones that are closer to each other. They're going to be sitting in those rooms. And although they might have, not have as severe of side effects because they are younger, they have the chance of contracting it and bringing it home to their families. And then we have their family members sick. So I'm worried about that spread, and some of the school districts that have stayed in or tried to go back to, full models and having to go right back into distance learning full on because they started this huge outbreak, because everybody was back close together. So those are mainly my concerns. When I've talked to my students, again, I teach a special education population. They already do have a lot of anxiety. They don't like being full on distance learning. They like the hybrid model because they feel safe with the spacing, and they also get that one-on-one or like in-person help. But they have talked to me about being afraid of coming back with everybody. So I have to voice for them as well. So those are kind of my things. I feel like March might actually be too soon, because even like what Bill said when he was sharing, are we going to magically have more space? And it doesn't sound that way. So I feel like that's about all that I had to add.
Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Superintendent Gronseth, do you want to address some of the comments, or do you want to move directly into board discussion?
Well, for Mr. Weber, yes, there were 2 positive cases. And I just want to mention that it's not just the positive cases, it's the quarantines that we have to consider as well. When we went to distance learning in November, we started off with low numbers like this, and very quickly that increased. And when we went to distance learning, we had, I believe it was 160 students and staff having to quarantine. And so I don't want to dismiss those quarantines either. But you're right, we can't just suddenly push out walls at the middle school and create more space, and that is a concern. I think the March 22nd date, the main difference would be that hopefully we will have a majority of our staff vaccinated. And to Kristen's point, children don't receive this vaccine. At least no one under it. There's different ages for each of the vaccines, so I don't want to say the wrong ages for each of those, but just recognizing that is a consideration as well. One thing I did want to point out is if we did come back all in, we would keep the same schedule for our students. And so not all of the grade levels would be on the bus at the same time. We would still have the elementaries on buses and then the secondary students on other buses.
Great.
All I have for now.
Thank you. Board members, I will keep track so that everybody has time, but if somebody wants to start, I say go for it.
Well,
Drew?
this is Tracy, or Drew, go first. I hate
Oh.
it going first all the time.
Tracy, I can go. This is Tim.
Sounds good.
I guess as I look at the entire situation, and trust me when I tell everybody and everybody out there in the public that we've heard from, we as board members, I'm assuming others have gotten the same messages that I have, which is we've heard from many different stakeholders. I appreciate the teachers coming on. I appreciate Angie coming on for the paraprofessionals, giving us their side of things. There's no doubt that when I look around at all the faces on the screen, everybody wants the kids back in school. And I agree, Bill, that, you know, it's difficult because it feels like, and it's possible that our kids are getting shortchanged. When it comes to their education, I think everybody is doing the best they can, who is an elected representative to ensure that we protect the interests of our school as an entity, whether it's financial interests or safety of everybody involved, that we have to go with what the recommendations are at this time. I like that we put March 22nd up there. I do like the fact that we have the ability to move that up if things look great. I guess one question maybe I
Tim, you have frozen. You froze at one question I have. Perhaps we'll move on to Drew, and then don't worry, you're frozen in a completely normal face. It looks fine. But we'll come back to you, Tim.
I love it. Yes, we all want the kids to be in school all the time, as quickly as we can. And to do that, you know, for a long time, I think you could ask any community member for years and years and years, what's the number one most important thing at school? It's the safety of the kids. It's the reason we have secure access. It's a reason we do our ALICE training. Like, that's all safety. And this is another similar safety issue in school that we're taking seriously. And I'm so thankful that we have. I think getting vaccines to the teachers, that's an important gate that we have to get through. For me personally, I think it would be hard to make many moves forward until that happens. It sounds like we've got some serious space issues at the middle school that need to be worked on. I'm hoping that there's a solution there that's, and this time until March 22nd will, I'm hoping, illuminate that for us and we can find a solution for that. But I can appreciate how tough that is. That's about it. I really like the feedback from the teachers union and actually a number of the stakeholders. It helps to inform our decisions, and we're all in a tough spot, and we just all want to do the best thing. So that's it for now.
Thank you. Tracy?
All right. So obviously I have some questions, and this is like very difficult for me because it's just been very mind consuming, but I just have I want to ask a couple questions. So going back to the regional support team, I want to know who is on the regional support team.
So when we meet with the regional support team, it is a portion of the team that meets with us, and then they go back to the whole team with what we're doing. So when we met this time, there was Cassie Sassenberg, Jody Fishnick, Mackenzie. I'm sorry, I can't remember Mackenzie's last name right now.
Okay.
And then Brianna Allen.
Okay, and then so when you met with the regional support team on Tuesday and they approved a plan, did they not know? I mean, I'm kind of confused because that was kind of what I had heard. There was a plan that was approved on Tuesday, but then it changed. And so I'm wondering, if the regional support team approved a plan on Tuesday, how did it look different than what eventually got to us on Friday? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one of the, going to the regional team is one of the stops along the way. And one of the things that they were asking was our ability to distance. And so that is one of the things that we had to look into a little bit more.
Okay.
They were comfortable with us going a little bit faster, but they also noted the differences between what MDE is recommending and what the Department of Health is recommending. They did note that the Department of Health has, they would prefer everyone to be 6 feet apart, but they were willing to go to 3 feet. And their approval was based on our ability to maintain the protocols and the guidelines. And we just, we probably could, but we just don't feel good about the space that's available, that we would be able to maintain the safety.
Okay, well, that clears that up in my head. So that's part of my headache today. So I want to go a little bit about the vaccines, because I know that that's just kind of a nightmare. It seems like all around, not on St. Peter Schools level, but like as the state. But now my understanding is that all of the people that want a vaccine from the school need to register themselves. So is there a way for us to keep a pulse on that? Because when the school was giving the vaccines, we obviously knew that we gave out X number of vaccines. So we know we have 20% of the staff vaccinated. Well, now we have the new magical way that we don't really know. So how are we going to be able to keep track who's registered, and then how many people actually have it? Because what's to say that voila, Joe Biden doesn't happen to find all these vaccines and everybody's vaccinated in 2 weeks? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to say, like, we need to be able to keep a pulse on that, because it seems like a lot of this is contingent on wanting our staff vaccinated, and I can respect that, but I would just like us to be able to keep track of that somehow.
Yeah, and that's another big change that happened since Tuesday when we met with the regional team, because that's all kind of rolled out since our meeting with them. Some of the information just came out today. So even when I spoke to Jody on Friday evening, she wasn't aware of the change yet. And so it's been constantly changing with the state. I understand that it was a pilot program and they're trying to keep the things that worked and jettison the things that weren't working. When districts were, we were going through our list and we were prioritizing, and we were being very strategic about that based on our learning model, based on age, based on staff who have high risks, saying, these are the people that we think are most important to put first on the list, and then worked our way through that. And, had we been able to continue that, we could have prioritized. If we said, boy, we really want to look at our 5th and 6th grade, we could have put our 5th and 6th grade staff on that list. And you're right. Everyone's just in the mix. And I am sure that the state and county both have ways that they are prioritizing staff. As you fill that out, you have to, you say what your role is, what your age is, if you have any health risks to consider, if you live with anyone with health risks. And so I'm sure they're trying to prioritize this as well. But because it is HIPAA, it is protected information, we technically can't ask people if they've been vaccinated. We can sure share that would be something that we would want to know so that we would be able to make good decisions. And hopefully people will volunteer that information for us so we do have a sense of how many people are vaccinated. But there's also staff who are getting vaccines from other sources. If they have another job, working in a nursing home or as a PCA, or from some other source, from their doctor's office because they're at high risk, anything. But hopefully we'll get a better sense of that, because you're right, that would be really vital information for us to be able to make a decision based on it.
And then we have, and then we also have like however many employees, but I can't believe that 100% of the employees want to be vaccinated either. You know what I mean? And so that's just kind of like something that somehow we would need to, not maybe have it be not identified, but maybe there's a way for a staff to indicate anonymously, yes, I'm still waiting to be vaccinated. You know what I mean? So we know we have 90 people that are still waiting to be vaccinated. Because then that's kind of putting on them to do that. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think another way to ask that question without crossing the boundaries is, have you been offered a vaccination? And then whether they took it or denied it.
That's true.
Or have you been given opportunity to vaccine?
Yeah. And so, and I just, obviously I want the kids back.
We all do.
I'm really very concerned about the mental health. And I know nobody likes to say the words that, things can happen, but bad things can happen to kids and I do not want to have that on my conscience. I want to be able to speak. And when we go back, I want it to be as safe as possible, but I have to be realistic to think it's probably not going to be perfect. And so I personally am not comfortable with just throwing out a date 7 weeks in advance, because to me, it's like, well, then we don't need to we don't need to let families know we're going to come back in 7 weeks. We had another informational meeting and we didn't take any action because we're waiting on more, we're waiting on being able to get our classroom spaced out, more protective equipment, vaccinations and whatnot. I personally don't see why we have to put it out there that we're going to do it on March 22nd. I'd rather keep it open and fluid and do it that way. And I have about 85 other questions, but my head hurts. And I think that about hits the most of them. So I appreciate all the work. I love teachers. Everybody should know that. Love my staff. I love everybody. But that's just kind of where I'm coming from. I think that kind of about covers it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Who wants to be next?
I can go.
All right, John.
So on your slide, can I go to follow up on Tracy's question? You listed the names of the people that you met with. I don't know those people. Well, except for Jody. But can you tell me their roles? I mean, what role do they fill? So because I'm trying to get a sense of how expert that group is in the health field, and because I'm assuming, and is there some education people on there as well? I hope that makes sense. You're on mute. Mr. Gronseth, you were on mute the whole time.
Of course I was. So I have to look up their title. I can do that. I'll have that for you in a couple minutes here.
Okay. Because in general, can you speak to it? Like, are they health people? Are they just community members or?
They're health professionals.
Okay, that helps me. So their information comes from the health side of things, correct? Mostly, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm not an expert on COVID, and so I need to rely as a school board member that's not trained in epidemiology to rely on those types of people to help make informed decisions. I noticed that that on the slide, maybe it was a mistake, but it said something about recommend 6 feet, but it also said recommend 3 feet. So does that mean that's not a requirement?
They require 3 feet. They recommend 6.
Okay. It said recommend for both. So that's why I
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I wanted to clear that up. So, what I think 5th and 6th grade, it sounds like that might be an easier thing to pull off with them not exchanging and taking different classes with different cohorts, because you could get rid of Saints time and some of that stuff, make some adjustments. Is that correct or not? Is that wrong?
Maybe I'll let Mr. Graff speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we currently are not running a Saints time. The idea would be, in a perfect world, if/when we go back to an in-person, we'd like to get band and choir back into the mix. So that's why there have been discussions about Saints time. We've also, the Saints time provides us with kind of that general intervention time, but you're 100% correct, Mr. Carlson, where we can adjust that schedule, and 5th and 6th grade is a much easier adjust because for the most part, students do travel in a cohort. It's the students who need intervention throughout the day that are mixing cohorts. So students who might receive special education services, reading intervention, math intervention, and our ELL students. In order to make that work in the grand scheme of that schedule, many of those students kind of flex in and out of various cohorts throughout the day.
Okay. But are those, when they do the special stuff like reading intervention, is there an opportunity to be socially distanced? Because those are smaller groups, correct?
We're using a push-in model for a lot of that in the 5th and 6th grade, where the interventionist goes into the classroom, and based on the student's availability and the interventionist's availability is where those students and the teachers meet within that cohort.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Mr. Graff, to keep asking you questions, but this one's for sure for you. How many shells do we have when you think of classrooms? Because I know the current model is to go into the classroom. Would there be an opportunity to take students out of the classroom just for this, just to allow for spacing, more spacing within the classroom instead of throwing another adult in there?
Yeah, I mean, we can, yes, anything is possible. And that's definitely something that we're looking at is how do we make that work in a pull-out model? It is a complete switch in process and philosophy, but it is definitely doable.
Yeah, I think we're having to do a lot of that in different things, I mean, and one last question, as long as your mic's on, what's stand and deliver model? Sorry, I wasn't, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, so you tend to think of it as the traditional model where students sit in rows, they face forward, they sit down, they shut up, and the teacher talks. That's a stand and deliver model where we've really tried to get away from that. We've tried to do small grouping and interaction, and with those dividers, every student's kind of in a cubicle, if you will. So we'd have to think about how to do that differently and able to keep that teacher 6 feet apart is what I was referring to.
Okay.
There's not much for that teacher to move besides being at the board in the front of the classroom.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, because I think, having a teacher present and getting a chance to work the art of teaching and trying to motivate and trying to inspire the kids to actually want to learn is a thing that's a missing element that we don't have when we're in distance learning as well. I'm sure teachers are trying, but I think they're more impactful definitely when they're in front of their students, whether it's stand and deliver, not as good, but it's better than not there at all. So I asked about the regional support team. Yeah, the vaccine thing, I think that's really tricky. That's a great answer, Mr. Gronseth, is you can ask if they've been offered a vaccine. Class sizes in 5th and 6th grade, where are we at with that? Are those the 28 to 32? Or are they smaller because it's a lower grade?
5th grade's slightly lower. It's a smaller class size, but 6th grade, I believe, is our largest class.
Okay. Have we heard of any districts that have come back? Because this has been kind of the push since, beginning of January, where they've come back and have had to reverse course.
Yes. Bloomington is the one that is probably the most recent one that they came back to in person, and it was actually their transportation department. The bus drivers need to quarantine. They weren't able to get kids to school, and so they went back to the distance learning model. There have been some others that have gone from in-person to hybrid and back to in-person, and have fluctuated more. And I think that's caused some turbulence in what everyone is doing. By the way, I did look them up, and I want to share because I feel bad that I didn't know their titles.
No, I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I was just curious. I just wanted to know generally, but go ahead.
Yeah, Cassie Sassenberg is the Health and Human Services Director for Nicollet County. And then Bree Allen is the Health Promotion and Prevention Services Supervisor. See, there's a reason I couldn't spit out their titles. And then Mackenzie Wolfel is she works with the prevention unit for the Department of Health.
Okay. For contact tracing and requirements for people being in quarantine, I know what the collegiate standard is. I'm not sure what is the high school standard for having to quarantine as far as being exposed to COVID.
Well, I think it depends on the individual circumstances, but we're really looking for have people been within 3 feet for 15 minutes or more. On buses, there's that standard of if you've been on the bus for more than a half an hour, then it's everybody on the bus. If you've been on the bus for 15 minutes to a half an hour, then it's if you've been within 6 feet of them. So it's like I think it's 2 rows ahead, 2 rows behind, and the people next to you. And then in classrooms, it's who's within that 6 feet circle for 15 minutes. Or it also depends if they were wearing a mask, if they or if they weren't wearing a mask. If they're wearing a mask and they had a plastic shield in front of them, it just really depends on the situations.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm just going to wrap up, Ben. I promise. I'm getting to my point, or at least my thought process. We are 49 days away from March 22nd, and that's 32 school days, learning days, subtracting the 2 planning days that they would have before we start. And maybe it's 1 less for President's Day. I don't know. And so I'm not understanding clearly what this extra time is being used for. And I think I agree with Tracy that, you know, if vaccines become available or we've solved the problem for 5th and 6th grade, I would feel much more comfortable if I just am not sure what the plan is from after tonight until March 22nd. What are we trying to accomplish in that amount of time? We're not knocking out walls and you know, making bigger classrooms. I just am unsure of what our situation is and which way we're trying to solve this problem. You know, the pull-out method isn't ideal. The stand and deliver method isn't ideal, but it's better than not being in school every day, in my opinion. I'm just one guy and 1/7 of the board. But I feel very strongly that I don't want to be held to a date that's when we're going to do it. And I would love to be updated on how we're doing on achieving our solutions to the problems that we have. I think that there are ways to be safe. I think Dr. Soderlund's brought up N95 masks a lot, and they are becoming more and more readily available. Double masking has been, I got data from a teacher about about the success of double masking. And so I don't want to throw a date that far out there. That's just too much learning that if we could come back sooner, I would be disappointed that everybody's locked into that date. And you're right, Mr. Gronseth. I mean, things could go the other way too, but they haven't been, and it's been about a month where we've been steady or dropping. So from my opinion, I would like to remove the date and plan to discuss it at our February meeting and regular board meeting, and have a plan if things look like we've solved some things. And again, Mr. Gronseth, if you all of a sudden we've got a plan and we can do it, I would meet sooner. I'd happy to meet sooner, because the health group that guides us, the regional advisory group, has given us the go ahead. But we still see some problems. I see them. I'm not blind to that. Just because some group that's not even, most of them don't even live in our town, have never been in the middle school, possibly, you know, I want to make sure that we're doing the safest thing. And we've always got the opt out to distance learning, you know, and it for those that feel that it's still too unsafe. So that's it, Ben.
Thanks, John. I do want to mention a couple things. You mentioned number of days. I think you were counting weekdays. We are in hybrid learning, so if you're talking about additional in-person days, even if we started today, that would be an additional 8 in-person days in the month of February for students, if I'm not wrong. And from March 1st to March 22nd, that would be an additional 6 days in the classroom for students. So we are coming from a place of currently being in hybrid. So our students are getting some in-person time. So it wouldn't be every day. And Fridays, my understanding, remain distance learning days. So we're really talking about 2 days per week. Is that correct, Superintendent Gronseth?
Yes. The that Friday, because we still have that number that I mentioned, 264 students in distance learning, our teachers need dedicated time to work with those students. And we also have a requirement to provide 400 minutes of planning because teachers are planning for in-person and electronic online learning. So between the additional planning time and the time to connect with those students, we would need to continue those Fridays.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that Fridays weren't part of the mix for when we go in person. So it's a 4-day week is what you're saying.
Well, it's a 5-day week, but one of the days is distance learning. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Bill would actually like to speak now, so. Dr. Soderlund?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Leonard. Just a few or several points maybe, but there's 2 vaccines currently available that are approved, FDA approved. Johnson & Johnson, there's a third one, I think Johnson & Johnson has it. It's a single dose, and it's not as effective, according to their studies, as the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. But I just want to touch on a couple of things. So the Moderna vaccine is approved for children 18 and over. The Pfizer has been approved for 16 years of age and over. So no matter what we do, we're not going to be vaccinating the children. Doctors can always make a decision to not follow the labeling and the recommendations, and they can prescribe something off label, but I think we need to get it through our head. The children are not going to get vaccinated. It's not been approved to do that. So, and another thing I think is noteworthy is a Moderna vaccine, and my understanding is everybody's so far around here has gotten the Pfizer, but Moderna is 80% effective after 1 dose. Pfizer, 1 dose is 52%, and I think the Johnson & Johnson that is probably going to be approved is in the 60 percentile with 1 dose. So I just want to throw that out. I think we need to be very aware that no matter what we do, children aren't going to be getting this vaccine. Another point I'd like to make, we keep talking about HIPAA, and we're concerned about HIPAA, and rightfully so. But I think by the same token, we have to understand that the school does want to know that your children have been vaccinated. And if your child plays a sport, they require a sports physical. So anyway, that isn't going anywhere. It's just something to ponder. The World Health Organization does recommend they have a 3-foot spacing guideline. CDC, they prefer 6. They can go with a 3-foot. But so there's a certain level, a certain distance keeps people safer. And I think we have a lot of different organizations out here, and if you read about them, they all have different recommendations. Bottom line is, we really don't know very much. We know some things right now, but we don't know very much. And case in point, we were going to have a big surge in COVID cases after Thanksgiving and Christmas, which we didn't see. We actually saw the numbers start to go down. And, so our modeling on what's happening out here, I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in, just from based on previous modeling. We've missed a lot of things here. One thing I've noticed as we're talking about this is the goalposts do get changed here. We're heading in this direction and we go in this direction and we bring in some more information. So right now our public health team said, yeah, based on our numbers and based on Governor Walz's recommendation that he wants to have schools full open. That's what he came out and said. We got to have that priority. And he actually kept the restaurants and the bars closed so that we could get the school children in, because the children are the priority. So we need to get the children in school. I think we all agree with that. But the goalposts are getting moved. Understandably, there's more information comes in and more people are considering different things. But at the end of the day, we're not going to get our children vaccinated. The best we can hope for is the teachers are going to get vaccinated. We're still going to have COVID because the children aren't getting vaccinated. It's still going to be out here in the public, and there's going to be risk. And I think we really need to be mindful that our goal is not to get rid of completely 100% get rid of all the risk, because that's not possible. We can use common sense and use science, use technology, use precautions, and we can reduce that risk substantially. You know, in medicine, I'm a pharmacist. There is no such thing as a safe drug. Every drug that gets dispensed, there are hazards associated with that drug. If you're going to take it, you have to be aware that there are risks. We want to hand out prescription medications that have low risk, but there's always a risk. So in medicine, we talk about your risk benefit here. And so anytime we practice medicine, there's always a risk. And to me, if there's a drug out there, you say you can take this drug and there's no risk whatsoever, I'm not aware of that. Anything we do in life, there's going to be a risk. So we want to reduce our risk as much as we can. One thing John mentioned that I bring up these masks, I'm going to bring them up again. I actually took the masks apart. I did particle counts on them because I have the equipment to do that. And we looked at them. We do have that option. So we're talking about plexiglass. Plexiglass is a second rate compared to wearing a decent mask. It's good to have face shields. I mean, all that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, washing your hands, when you touch a surface, wash your hands, don't rub your eyes, wear a mask. And if you want to wear the best mask, it's going to be one of those KN95 or N95 masks, and they are becoming more and more available. So we do have options here. And finally, I think we need to think outside the box a little bit. And like Mr. Carlson brought up, you got the standard liver model, you got bringing children out and expanding the classroom, maybe into the hallway is my understanding. There's other ways we can look at this. To me, I'm going to feel really good if we can say, I have a plan, I hear a plan, we're going to at least get the 5th and 6th graders back. I mean, start moving forward here. And right now our system is good, we're working, we got K through 4 are all in. It's wonderful. Early childhood, that's great. We need to start getting the children back into school. So I can't at this time support March 22nd, and I appreciate what the teacher said. I really do. I love to hear from everybody, but there's a solution out here. I want to live in the solution, not the problem. There's all kinds of problems. We can go around and talk about problems all day. What is the solution here? How do we make this work? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soderlin. Vicki, do you want to speak now?
Yes, I would like to. I'm not on mute, am I? No.
No,
Okay.
you're great.
Okay. So I guess first off, what I'm thinking is, none of us are really coming out and saying that we have the perfect answer. And that's what's great about these getting together and kind of networking and figuring out and taking the recommendations from the people, the experts that know of them. So I think that, none of us really have the right answer, but we're working towards trying to find solutions. Coming probably from a social worker's perspective, it's consistency. And I am so worried about putting the kids back there, then having to pull them, then putting them back there and then having to pull them. It's that unknown for them. I am concerned about mental health. But I'm hoping that they have parents, grandparents, teachers that they can talk with and get outside and do some fresh stuff. They've got games that they can enjoy. I know that the mental health is really important, but and even Mr. Gronseth had said that, the kids, some of the schools are they've gone back to it and then they've had to take back out. I just think that that's so confusing for the kids and for the teachers. I mean, they put so much work into what they're already doing, and then to have to tell them, okay, now we're going to switch back to this. I just think it's really confusing for mostly the kids. So, and then if they're, okay, if they go back to school, one teacher or one student is positive, then that whole classroom has to be out of school for 14 days. And I'm just really concerned. I think that that's sending them back too soon. And I'm worried about not putting a date on it because everybody likes to know, okay, when do you see this might coming to an end? It's good to have some visual that you can at least, know that this is what we're talking about. Sure, it could change. We could do it a little sooner or we could do a little after, but everybody wants to know, how is it going to end? Where's the end of this? So having a date, I don't think is a real big deal. It's just giving people an idea of when we would like to see it. It's not saying that we couldn't go back earlier. So I'm just, I don't know. I'm just concerned about putting them in, pulling them out, putting them in, pulling them out. So that's what I have to say.
Great, thank you, Vicki. We've had a lot of good conversation. I just have a couple of thoughts, and then we can keep discussing what we want to do as a group. But as I understand it, just to summarize, we had a plan approved by the regional support team. And that plan was for March 1st. It wasn't everybody all in by February 7th. It was everybody in by March 1st. We came back, we had some more conversations with our administrators and our staff about actually implementing that. There were discussions that might take a little bit of more time. Again, everybody's on board with going back. I haven't heard I didn't hear Keith, I didn't hear Angie, I didn't hear anyone say, we don't want to go back. We all want to go back, but we had some more conversations. And we also, frankly, and I'll put a jab at the state, I thought we were getting hundreds of vaccines. I don't see those vaccines. I feel like we were led to believe that we would have a mass vaccination event because the state would provide us vaccines, and now the state doesn't have any more, or they might, but the county has some. Go on the internet, good luck to you. That frustrates me. All of that goes on. We're here tonight discussing a plan that is not 6 months later. It's not 2 months later. It's 3 weeks. And again, we are in hybrid. We plan on staying in hybrid until we go to full all in person. That is 6 extra days that those kids won't be in the classroom, that it would be distance learning. I want kids to be in the classroom. We all want kids to be in the classroom. So I'm looking at the difference, not of can we start all in tomorrow, but it's really the difference between those two things is 6 days. And if we think that we can do it the St. Peter way, that we can do it well on March 22nd, that's the day, first day of the last quarter, that gets our seniors in. I've got a senior. That gets our freshmen in. I've got freshmen. That gets our middle schoolers, everybody in. We can finish the year strong. I don't see a vast difference between those two plans, and I don't think that they compete. I think that we're really, really talking about the same thing, and we're really discussing a small period of time. My other concern, and I've heard a couple people mention it, well, if we're talking about March 22nd, why decide tonight? I guess I would like to know from the superintendent and from administrators, how long it takes to implement a plan. The plan that was presented initially was probably a little too aggressive, but that the regional support team voted on, that was a month. If we wait until our February board meeting, that's February 18th. So you're not, any illusion of coming back before March 22nd is gone if we're waiting to make a decision. So how much lead time between a decision and a start date do we need? And if so, what might a board action look like that could accommodate a date, and also the possibility, if there is a mass vaccination event where hundreds of staff are eligible to get the vaccine, or if something else happens, that potentially we could boost that up a week or so. I'm concerned about giving parents enough time. I'm concerned that I think it's good that we have state mandated planning days. We need those planning days, but that means that those won't be school days. We can't call that for Thursday and Friday on a Monday. So we're going to need time for that. Those are my thoughts.
Just responding to the time pieces of that. I think everything that we're doing, including this discussion tonight, is part of that process. One of the things that we needed to do was talk to the regional support team. The process for setting that meeting is we have to go through MDE and request a meeting date, and then it takes time for them to respond to a request to meet, and then we have that meeting. We've had that now, so that was, it was about a week of setting just that meeting and having that meeting and getting the go ahead for that. That piece is done. If we were going to come back sooner, and you've requested that we have a board meeting to make those decisions, it's 72 hours to post that meeting and then to have the meeting. As you mentioned, we like to give families as much time as possible to plan ahead. We don't know all the intricacies of what that means for every family, so we just try to give them as much time as possible. And then our staff too need time to prepare for a different learning model. We know that we have to provide at least 2 days of planning before that shift. And like in the case of the middle school, it means moving furniture in. And so our custodial staff needs time to move that in. So it really isn't something that we could say on a Tuesday that Friday we're coming back, because we probably need at least a week to prepare and plan and move furniture and give families that notice too. So the farther ahead we can plan, the better and more efficient we can make a transition.
Hey, Mr. Gronseth, with what Ben was saying and what I had seen, and maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, is the plan that was presented to the regional advisory team, was that March 1st? Or I thought I saw dates that were in February.
It was a rolling start. So the all-in mark was March 1st to have everyone in. The original plan had our 5th and 6th grade starting sooner, and considered having our 9th and 12th grade coming in sooner. The complexities of bringing back part of the high school for the reasons that Principal Engeldinger had mentioned, where you have mixed classes and the complexities with that, we had to back off that. So really the earlier piece, which was earlier by 2 weeks, was 5th and 6th grade. And that was on February 16th. And then the rest coming in on March 1st.
Is there a way we could figure out a plan for 5th and 6th grade to be, it doesn't have to be the 16th, but to have them come in sooner? Because it seems like most districts are doing some sort of progressive, and it was part of the layout early on was K through 2, 3 through 5, or I don't know if how it was spelled out generally, but could we possibly bring the 5th and 6th grade students in, or what are your thoughts on that? I guess that's my question.
Well, and really that was part of our initial plan. That was our hope that we would be able to do that. I think the conversations that we've had about setting up pilot classrooms and bringing desks and tables in, that is exactly where we weren't able to find that space, because our middle school classrooms on average are 700 to 800 square feet, and our elementary classrooms are about 900 square feet. So the middle school is where we have our smallest our classrooms, and yet they have more students than they have in the elementary. So we're trying to put more kids into smaller spaces, and that was really the challenge. And another piece of that, and we've spoken to this a bit already too, is we've lost kind of that local control over the vaccinations and being able to prioritize where those are going. Perhaps if we were able to say, we're going to put our 5th and 6th grade staff, or anyone who works with our 5th and 6th graders, on the top of that list, maybe we would have been able to move a little bit faster. And perhaps there's a possibility that we could reach out to the county and try to prioritize some of that. I think the challenge is, as of this morning, they were planning on starting their vaccinations midweek, and they still didn't know how many they were going to have and who was going to be on that list. So I think the unpredictability with that will make it tough, but that is an area that we could look at as a possibility. But like I said, we've lost that local control piece. So I would still like to explore ways that we might be able to bring 5th and 6th grade in earlier, and we'll continue to work on that. But right now we don't have those solutions, and we need some more time to work on that.
And then Ben, to your point about 6 days, I just think that's doubling their exposure for 3 weeks to their teacher. And teacher time, all studies show, is the main thing in learning. Right now, they would have 4 days of class time and homework at night. Right now, they have 2 days of class time and 5 days for homework. And a lot of, I think, while we talk about flipped classroom, well, that's how math was actually taught for a while back in the day when Stillwater started everything up. And then they would come to school and work. They'd learn it on the video and come to school to work on it. I just think that the more teacher time they have, the better they're going to succeed.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think the teacher time is really important. When the district brings a proposal to us, I think that this board has been clear that we want to be in-person school. So my assumption is that when the district brings a proposal before us, they are telling us when they can be in school. And so if it's a matter of, well, can we just bring them back 6 days sooner and it work exactly the same and be fine? Yeah, I want those 6 days too. What I assume is that the district is bringing us their proposal that will work. And if an earlier proposal would have worked, they would have brought that to us, I guess, is what I was operating under.
This is Tracy. I have a couple questions. Well, first off, to kind of go on that days, kind of what John was talking about too, is that I believe that the in-person days will be more impactful than the hybrid days. So if you have 2 in-person days now, but they're hybrid days, and now you have 4, they're all going to be better days because you're not having this every other day thing. But that's just the philosophy. But here's the other thing. So I'm a little frustrated because like when Ben all of a sudden is talking about March 1st, like I didn't ever even know there was a March 1st. And somebody today was telling me about bringing 9 to 12 back, and I understand that like the plans change, but is there a way to like be a little more, I mean, if we're going to be the ones supposedly, I don't know, it just feels very frustrating to me because I don't really know, everything's changing and it's just like I don't really know what's going on, and I have a big headache, and maybe that's part of it. But I guess the March 1st thing really threw me because I never even knew about a March 1st. I didn't even know that existed. And then with the vaccines, I know when you click on that link with the county, they do ask what model we're in. And so I'm guessing that that determines how they're prioritizing. So I guess it would be nice to communicate with the county at least, if our intentions were to do something. So they kind of knew like, hey, if we are thinking about bringing 5th and 6th grade back, that they would know that, because my guess is that is factoring into how they're distributing.
That's a great point, Tracy.
Tracy, just to clarify, we received that planning last week via email.
The March 1st one?
Yes.
Okay, I must have missed that email. Sorry.
I have a question also about, well, okay, so I in my mind's eye, I can see how all in-person could look, how the distance could be maintained, where, you know, where possible. We have some holes there at the middle school that we need to figure out. I can see how lunch and meal distribution could work. It would be modified, I'm sure, but it, you know, I think we could get there. I have questions about busing, like how, and I don't know if we've had that discussion with the Saints bus service. They've been excellent to work with, and they've been very accommodating at every turn. I don't know what that would look like.
If we go to an all-in model, then the distancing on the busing isn't a consideration. They would have assigned seats on the bus, and if there were an exposure, we would know who was sitting, you know, 2 rows in front, 2 rows behind, and next to, and those would be close contacts.
Okay, I knew that was the case prior, that if you're in, you know, distance doesn't need to be maintained if you're all in person, and I just didn't know if that changed. So, all right, thank you.
Any further conversation?
Yeah, if I may jump in one more time.
Please.
So just to recap, though, in December, Governor Walz said we need to get the children back to school. And that wasn't tied to vaccines. That was just throwing aside his original guidance and let's make this happen. What do we have to do to bring the children back? I am glad we're talking about the vaccines. That isn't necessarily going to be the cure-all. Just to recap that, I hope everybody that wants one gets a vaccine sooner rather than later. But right now, we have some people have been vaccinated in this country. Our numbers are going down. They were going down after the peak in Minnesota that occurred prior to Thanksgiving. So we've been on a steady downward trend. I think the CDC put out a study that they'd done in Wisconsin, and we can sit and pick apart the study, and maybe rightfully so. But the conclusion was that with proper measures, the transmission rate in a school is substantially less than it is in the community. So actually, the school is doing a better job of keeping everybody safe than just being out in the community at large. Another thing that I think we need to focus on too is that the regional team, we've been told you know, the regional team is basically calling the shots. And the governor has set this up, and he's given us so many cases per 10,000, then we can be hybrid. If it's less than that, we can be full open and all that. And then part of the movement on the goalpost has been we've handed it off to the regional team then. And now I think we need to acknowledge at least that the regional team has said we're good to open. And the last time we had a board meeting, it's like, well, we're going to defer to the regional team because they're the experts. Well, the experts said we can open. But now we've got some other issues in here, which AKA the vaccine. And now that's going to become the new goalpost. I think at the end of the day, we can talk about how many days, if we do it this way, we got more days, if we do it that way. I want to see the children back. And I want to see a plan, the next board meeting, on how are we going to get the 5th and 6th grade back before March 22nd. I'd like to hear a plan on how we're going to get open, how we could potentially open before March 22nd. And granted, we need days, we need 72 hours to notify people. We need the days that the governor's given the teachers to prepare. We need all this time, but I think we have time right now. What I want to have is a plan. And right now saying, oh, we're going to be full open March 22nd, that really doesn't sound like a plan. That sounds like a hope or a dream because there's too many variables, and I assume the goalposts will change between now and then. So that being said, that's a final comment I'm going to make tonight. Let's have a plan the next meeting. How do we at least get 5th and 6th grade back before March 1st? How do we do this, or at March 1st? That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soderlund. A couple of thoughts to that. It's my understanding, and if this is not correct, I want to be corrected for sure, but that this plan says that we will be back 100% in person on March 22nd. The caveats that exist would be the caveats if we were back 100% in person 3 days from now, because they're tied to things outside our concern. So that this is a hard plan. It does differ from the one that was accepted by the regional team by 3 weeks. But it is a hard plan. We can always have additional meetings, but I will say that our next scheduled board meeting is February 18th. So if we are going to wait till February 18th to make a decision about wanting to get kids back on March 1st, which our district has told us is not possible, I don't see how we can do that on February 18th. So I want to make sure that whether it's this meeting or another meeting, we are having enough time to make those decisions so that we're not actually starting later than we could have because we waited to make a meeting. I don't know, Superintendent Gronseth, again, I think just clarifying what you would recommend tonight.
Well, I kind of go back to our recommendation that we presented of looking at the 22nd for bringing all of our students back. That was the culmination of conversations with our teachers, with our principals group, with our COVID team. That was the date that we all felt that we could bring our students back. If we were going to make a change to that, it is a team effort. We're all making these plans together, and I would want to have all of those voices in that decision again. If we were able to find something that made a difference, if we were able to work with the county to direct to direct vaccines, or if we were able to find a solution to our space issues, that is something that we would discuss with the whole team and bring back to you as soon as we possibly could.
Mr. Gronseth, I'm still fixated on something Tracy said about there's something they want to know what learning model you're in as a teacher. I think they're looking for a sense of urgency is my interpretation. I'm interested in what you think of that small point that Tracy brought up about maybe Tracy can clarify because to kind of explain what type of learning model, because if we set a goal of March 1st and we don't reach the goal, we can move it back. But having a month and a half to try to solve problems allows us to, we'll what's that rule? The work will fill the amount of time that you give it, and I don't mind it being a longer process, but I do if it doesn't have to be a longer process, if that makes sense. Tracy, maybe can you clarify what you said earlier about the Nicollet County thing?
Well, I just, we got that email and I just clicked on it to see like what the survey was. Not that I was going to sign up for a vaccine, but it just asked on there what, it had asked different, obviously they're trying to determine how to give out the vaccines. Because it asked like if you had a health risk or if anybody in your family had a health risk, and what you did at the school in terms of to make sure you were a staff person. And then it asked which learning model your school was in. And the reason that they asked that, I'm guessing, would be because that's how they would determine. I mean, they have to, I don't know why they wouldn't just ask it just out of curiosity. They obviously were going to use it to determine how they were going to distribute the vaccines. That makes sense because it did to me, but it's late.
Yeah, I just thought that, that it seemed like if there was a sense of urgency, maybe the Nicollet County might respond better, in that sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering too.
I think giving our considerations of the slow march of timing, when to make these moves and allowing enough time for everyone to react and enact changes so parents are prepared. So with that in mind, and the fact that I think this plan has maximum buy-in with the most groups. I think that the unions have spoken to this. They're comfortable with this. The county is comfortable with it. Our executive team is comfortable with it. That carries a lot of weight for me. So I move to approve the learning model transition presented here before us with the target of all in-person March 22nd.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Vicky. I'll make a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Is this a progressive coming in, or would grades 5 through 12 all come in on the 22nd?
The recommendation was for all grades to come in on the 22nd. I would throw in that caveat that we've had a lot of discussion that if we were able to do that sooner, we certainly would.
The motion, Drew, was for 22nd.
Yes.
I also feel that when we already have a plan approved and by the regional advisory team and And we're going from one of the first, which I'm fine not being one of the first to have everybody back, but to be one of the last because of our delay in our area. I mean, people are ahead of us already, and we can say what we want, but they have their regional team as well, and they approved theirs, and we don't know the class size in St. James or Worthington or any of these schools. So I just don't know how I'm going to vote.
John, I'd like to ask you a question that I don't mean to be pointed, so I apologize.
No, please. No,
it probably is. And I am saying this not at you, but really for all of our discussion. Do we feel like our staff, our administrators, our superintendent brought to us a plan that is the very best they can do? Or do you think that this is just what they want, but they could actually do a lot better if we just said, we want you to do better?
I don't know. I'm not an educational professional. I'm not a health professional. I don't know. I wasn't convinced tonight that that there might not be a better plan out there. I did hear Mr. Gronseth mention that if he felt that they could bring in people sooner, that he would bring it to the board. But the last time we did this, and it worked out fine, but the last time we did this, we decided never to talk again until January 4th, about bringing kids back. And I think it's a fluid situation, and if the 5th and 6th grade situation can be solved, and if we can, keep it as safe as the COVID team says we need to, the regional team, I don't know. Sorry, Ben, it's not a very clear answer. It's one of these tough ones.
It's a very clear answer, John.
Ben, can I jump in here on that?
Absolutely.
Originally the plan was we were going to get the elementary kids back, which I believe would include 5th and 6th graders, in a general way, but we were going to roll grades back slowly. We were going to bring some in, and then we were going to have take time to stabilize and make sure everything was good. Then we were going to bring in the higher grades, and we were going to roll in to full all in. We were going to take a rolling method to get to everybody into school. So that was the original plan. Now, in Superintendent Gronseth did have a plan that I believe March 1st was the target date. And now the target date is March 26th, and instead of rolling, we're just going to jump. Everybody's going to go back in. Now, I think we're getting a little confused here. So is this the best plan? I don't think it is, because I think we already had a plan that we talked about in December, and we implemented. I think the kids started back on January 11th. We already had a plan, and we're in the middle of doing this. And, bringing everybody all in at once is counter to what our original plan was. So is this the best plan? I don't think it is, or else that last plan was a bad plan. And this is now we finally are enlightened, and this is the way we ought to do it. Here, I don't think so. I don't think it's a question of which is the best plan. We need to get 5th and 6th grade got to get back in. It's going to make a lot more sense if everybody's back in on March 22nd. Then give me a plan on how we're going to transition there. And we're not just going to wake up in the morning and say, ta-da, everybody's back in school now today. The reason that we were doing the rolling anyway is that way it would give us flexibility to see if there was a problem that we could address it before we went all in on it. So this plan is an all-in plan. The last one was a rolling one, and that made a lot more sense. Thank you.
I've got a question.
Please.
Was it said that middle school was the hardest one because of the space? And I I thought that they tried a bunch of different things, putting the plexiglass up. I thought that was the hardest one to get the kids to come back. Did I misunderstand that?
No, that is that's right, because it has the smaller classrooms.
Okay. Okay.
It's also my understanding that we have said a couple times we really can't roll the high school because they all are in electives together, so that would be difficult. That's what I heard. And that I don't think your original feeling, the original plan, if we call it that, was a bad one. I just think that we had more time to think about the logistics of that, go through that. There were some additional things brought up, and that led to the culmination of what we're here tonight. And we weren't presented, this was sort of a pre-plan, because this is the first meeting, this is the plan that we're presented with. Again, I love everyone's passion for wanting to go back, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I know for me personally, having the superintendent, having the principals, having teachers here, having paras tell us that this plan works and that this is, I trust that, and I trust all of you to tell me the best you can possibly do. I don't want to discuss plans that are the fourth best thing we can do. And I've been on the school board for, I don't know, 14 or 15 years now. And I feel like when we're presented plans, we're presented the best plan. And so if that's not true, then that'd be great to know. But I have that trust and I have that faith in district staff to do that. And while going back all in person on March 1st would be great, in my mind, that's not possible, because I didn't hear tonight from the superintendent and the staff that March 1st was possible.
So Ben, this is Tracy. So you had asked John the question about if this was the best plan. And I think it's a really good plan. And I'm going to make a lot of enemies with some possible friends that I have in the school district, but I always think teachers are real creative. And maybe we go back and say, can we try for something different? And maybe they really can't, and that's fine. But, it kind of goes like that whole thing, like when the tornado came and everything was tore down. It's amazing what you can do sometimes if you really put your mind to it. And not that they didn't put their mind to it. I don't mean that, but you would ask if it was the best plan. I think it's coincident. I think it's the first day of the fourth quarter. So I think it might be a plan of convenience there. And I can appreciate that, but I don't know if it's the best plan. I don't know.
And I could get on board with voting yes if I knew that that the administration would work, in a slight sense of urgency. I'm not saying drop everything, but that you would commit to calling a meeting within the 72 hours whenever a plan, because these are moving goalposts. I mean, we're talking about COVID. Nobody's ever gone through this before. And if all of a sudden they're working at it and they go, we got it. I know how we can get fifth and sixth grade back, and they talk about it. They have a plan, and they decide, yes, we can do this, and we don't have to wait until the 22nd to do it. I would be on board with voting. The date thing throws me quite a bit. I mean, if a better plan comes along 2 weeks from now, that we feel we can implement sooner than the 22nd, I would like to have that and not have the 22nd be seen as a hard, fast date. If that's not the case, totally get it. but I need to vote against.
So I'll jump in and I'll say that I think every day since my very first day back in, I guess it was the end of June, we have been talking about COVID, and we have held students at the center of all of those discussions. And I can guarantee you that every day our staff is working as hard as they possibly can to serve our students the very best that we can. I know that we're all tired of hearing that we are in uncharted territory, but there isn't a better way of saying it. We are trying our darndest without a map to find our way through a pandemic. And for the first time in quite some time, I feel like there is some hope, like we are in a new phase of this pandemic where we are talking about how we can come back. And we are hearing about staff and our health professionals getting vaccinated, that is giving us some security. It's giving us some hope, a way forward. And, while their processes for getting these vaccines are probably not the best, they have never done this before either. They have never tried to vaccinate millions of people all at once. Maybe some of their predecessors did, things like the polio vaccine when the whole country was going, but we know that didn't always go smoothly either. And so I know between the state and the county and teachers and administrators, every day we are trying to do the very best that we can. And I feel like our staff will continue to work on this. I know I get emails, I get emails from board members and staff members, sometimes at the middle of the night, saying, you know what, I was laying here thinking and I'm not going to be able to sleep until I write this down. And and sometimes I'm answering them shortly after because I'm up thinking about it too. We're all looking for the very best solutions for our students that we can do. And at the same time, keeping our staff and our community as safe as we can. And I know that we are coming up with creative solutions. I know that that was in the heart that came up with putting the desks and the tables in a room, trying to find a way to make that work. We're going to continue to look for those solutions, and we will always present you with the very best thing that we can. It is a process of developing this and working together, but we also have to make sure that we're doing that in the safest way possible, and then that we're not just coming back because we think we should come back in a way that is responsible and respectful and holds students and staff all at the heart of it. So I just, that was on my heart to say, and so I feel like I've shared my piece.
Yeah, the danger of talking in these things is once in a while things come out the wrong way. I do not question the work ethic or the dedication of the administrative team and the teachers. I'm just saying, if the timeline does move up, that it appears that a solution has been found, that we would try to get together and move up the date of whether it's 5th and 6th or some miracle 5th through 8th. Then that would get my yes vote.
I believe in the motion, the intent in the motion was that March 22nd date is the backstop. That's the latest. Can always go earlier. I mean, not always. God, if it was only that easy. But I think we have the option of doing that.
I think regardless of whether this motion passes or not, I would like to call another board meeting before February 18th. Dr. Gronseth or Superintendent Gronseth, I would ask for your guidance on whether you would prefer that to be the 8th or the 11th of February. Monday or Thursday next week.
Probably Thursday.
I would like to make that a special board meeting, and I would like to limit it to 1 hour. I'm very conscious of, I appreciate everyone's participation in these meetings, and you know, this is my main school board meeting every couple of weeks, and this is how I participate. A lot of you have to be at school tomorrow very early, and this preparing for meetings like these is in addition to all of your regular work, and I want to be empathetic to that. So I don't want to call a ton of meetings, and I don't want to take up hours and hours, but I think having a check-in on the 11th at 6:30 would be good.
So is that what Drew said? Is that kind of the understanding? Is that it's the backstop, and that it might, if things move faster, it might happen sooner?
My feeling is that if this motion doesn't pass, we have no plan. If this motion passes, we still want to know if we can bring those middle school classes back earlier, and that would be a few business days for our staff at the district to work on that and come back with their best proposal at that time. And it may be March 22nd, and it may be sooner than that.
Excellent. That's what I needed to hear. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. Superintendent Gronseth, I have another point of order. Every meeting during a pandemic is a learning opportunity. Tim is having internet troubles and is not on the phone and is not present on video. Did put his feelings about the motion that is on the table in the chat box. I do not know if the chat box is a legal means of voting on a motion.
I don't have an answer for that. I mean, it is a written vote. I think that when it comes to school boards and Robert's Rules of Order, as long as all members are in agreement with how something is being done, that's an okay way to do it.
Thank you. And you, just to clarify, he is present. He can hear us. He can chat. He just cannot use his microphone and camera.
This is Tracy. So if we're going to meet next Thursday, I'm just throwing it out there. Do we not feel comfortable just not making about just taking this motion off the table? I mean, I know I can't do that because I didn't make it, but if we're meeting again, and does that make it 10 days? Would it be terrible if we just said we're going to meet in 10 days?
Well, my feeling on that is that we really focused that second discussion. All I have heard tonight from our experts is that the high school has to come back at one time because there's too many students across the grade levels in different electives.
Yeah.
So, And I haven't heard us say that we would be able to bring back the high school prior to May 22nd. What I have heard, or March 22nd, sorry, March 22nd. What I did hear was that we think that perhaps, given some additional time, we could look at bringing the middle school back full in person prior to March 22nd. Is that an accurate description, Superintendent Gronseth?
I think that we were looking at trying to do a rolling start, possibly looking at the fifth and sixth grade being able to start before, but I'll go back to, that's really going to be the effort of a team to try to solve that problem. And I don't want to, say that I can do something that I will need a team to work with to decide on that. I know that is what we're looking at. We weren't able to get there. Maybe with 2 more weeks of a whole team working on it, we'll be able to find a solution, but I can't promise that.
Just to follow up on that. So the benefit of this motion tonight would be that the high school would have clarity of when they would go back in person, correct? Or is that still something that could change?
Well, if there's anything that we've learned over the past year and 3 months is that nothing is solid. We have to be able to pivot. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen on March 22nd. If we look at the news, we know that there are new strains of this vaccine that are starting to make their way through the nation too. We could be in a completely different situation then. Our hope is that the vaccines are going to slow that. What putting it on the 22nd does tonight is it does put a goalpost at the end that we're saying this is our goal where we want everyone to be all in. We've said that we'll work on plans and try to get things in place to make some of that happen sooner. And I think having a meeting on the 11th, we'll be able to give you an update on where things are and let you know if we were able to come to an agreement that we could bring in some of our students earlier. But basically, it's putting that goalpost out there for us for all grades, even though we'd like to bring some in sooner.
So Tracy, still what I'm hearing is it lets high school parents know tonight when they'll be returning. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, and not to muddy things up, which I have a tendency to do, but actually 9 through 12 has a pretty big space. Can you ever go out of order and bring back, I don't know, 5, 6, 9, 12, or just 9, 12? Because the school's walls are movable. It's a newer building. It might be easier in that space to create distance, but I don't know if you can even do that. That's not how it was presented by the governor originally. But doesn't it seem like that building has a better potential to be able to get people back than even the middle school?
Annette, I want you to answer this.
Yeah, sure. We certainly have some great square footage. We do not have movable walls. We've got a lot of glass in the building. It's not movable. But we do have the pod spaces that we've certainly talked about expanding the sizes of our classes in order to bring more kids back. That being said, the idea of bringing back less than all kids it seems to not be a feasible plan because of mixed grade level classes. So that's the main reason for not just bringing back 1 or 2 grade levels at a time. And having all kids back, like honestly, like we can't wait for that, and we can spread them out all over the place if we'd like. I'm uncertain what the benefit of having a giant class spread out throughout the commons would be, as far as teaching and learning is concerned. I mean, we're talking through all of this as possibilities, certainly. Keith, how do you feel about us taking over the gym?
Like I said, I'll be in there with 39 kids. So that means I got to take 2 of the gym stations. So that'll give you 1.
We've threatened to offer our cooking classes in the gym because they're so popular, but.
So I just want to, so by March 22nd, I just want to confirm. So by March 22nd, we're going to have the same number of kids. We're going to have the same building. So the only thing that's going to change is how many people are vaccinated ultimately, right? I mean, because there's no other variables here, right? Because the rooms aren't going to get bigger. I guess the class sizes aren't going to go down. So we're just so the vaccine is really the whole motivating factor with this, because the kids, when they come back on March 22nd, they aren't going to magically going to be able to be 3 feet apart. So it's just vaccinations. The long and the short of it is, it's the vaccinations. Is that just simplifying it too much?
I think that's a major piece. It does allow for people to be vaccinated, and if they choose to.
So then that brings me back to wanting to know who's been offered that vaccination. That to me is a big deal, because if I find out on March 1st that everybody has been offered a vaccination, do we need 3 weeks to plan to bring them all back in person? I'm looking at the teachers here. I don't know, maybe we do.
Yeah, Keith and Jake, do you have thoughts?
Well, sure. The one thing we talked about is the vaccination protocol. So how's it work? You get your first shot, 21 days later, you get your second shot, and then it's 10 days later, 95% effective. Is that how it was, Mr. Solomon? And I heard you talking on some of the first shot effectiveness, but you didn't follow up with the second, and then how long it took for the 95 to 100% effectiveness. I didn't quite catch that. So that would fall into our timeline of March 22nd. And also one good thing about this plan is that when we do switch models is if you add the 5th and 6th grade and you want to start March 1st, we lose 2 contact days because we have to have 2 planning days there. And then if we decide to move the high school March 22nd, we'll have to take 2 contract days there for planning. So now, you're going to have middle school missing a couple of days, high school missing a couple more days. So you are losing about 4 contact days, where combining it all together in one release, we're only going to be losing the 2 or 1 roll in.
Well, if the 5th and 6th grade were going to come back, the 9th through 12th grade teachers wouldn't need planning days, would they?
No, but the 5th and 6th graders would.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So then that takes those hybrid learners not coming into school those 2 days, or 1 hybrid day, and you don't do distance learning on a Friday. So the 5th and 6th graders would lose 2 days. But then when you go to plan for the high school coming back, then they would have the 2 days also.
Okay. So kids are losing out on 2 days.
I also have a big concern about class sizes here at the middle school.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to have in this classroom, I would have possibly 32 kids and 4 adults in this classroom. And these kids are going to be 2 feet apart. So I would feel comfortable if there's a solution to help with that for coming back. So I also feel that is an obstacle that we need to put our heads together to try to figure it out. We have some of the biggest class size and some of the smallest rooms.
Yeah.
That is a huge hurdle here at the middle school.
And so so then that kind of brings me back to if everybody is vaccinated, are we comfortable sending the kids back if they're only 2 feet apart? Yes?
I would feel comfortable if there's also a measure in place to provide more safety for the kids as well, because they will be within 2 feet, yes.
Okay, so we probably want to identify some of that stuff. You see what I'm trying to say here? Like I'm trying to figure out what we need to, I don't know.
Yep.
Thank you. I do appreciate your guys' opinions. I do like you guys, just so you know.
For sure, no problem.
Well, I don't know if we do have PPE needs or barrier needs, what the lead time is on that stuff too. I think that some of this time is planning time. The switchover time maybe is a constant amount because you're not going to do that until the very end. But obviously these discussions are ongoing, and there's a lot of benefit in having a little bit more time to think through, so that when these students do arrive back, that's the best, the best possible plan, the best possible scenario that they're coming back into. Not, oh, now we got to switch it up because we didn't have time to think about this, or we didn't get our Plex delivered because they needed some extra lead time.
I think at this point, we just need to roll it out for a vote. I think we've just beat the horse as much as we all kind of know what we're gonna do, and we just need to do it and let these poor people that have to work tomorrow with all these kids get to bed or enjoy some wine or something.
Tracy, you are so right.
I am. Thank you, Ben. I'm glad you agree with me.
I'm going to call this vote. Tim, I will read the chat for the record. This is Tim. I am voting to move forward with the proposal that is approved through many levels of oversight. I hope that we can move forward sooner and that our admin team is looking for answers. I am unwilling to take on the liability of moving forward with a plan that creates or even remotely looks as if we are not providing a safe work environment. So that is what Tim said. Vicky.
Well, I guess I'm going to go with the experts. I mean, whenever I think about like the teachers, I always think, okay, who better knows the situation to walk in their shoes, see what they're doing, what they've done, and they came up with the recommendation. So I have to go with it. I'm saying yes.
Hager, yes. Drew?
Dixon, aye.
Dr. Soderlund?
No. Soderlund, no.
Tracy?
Do we know? Only because the March 22nd doesn't make sense to me. It's a date. I'd rather see it based on something and not a date. So no.
John?
I'm voting aye, as with the caveat that I was told that if we can come up with a plan sooner, we will implement it sooner. And Ben, I think the best way, if Loki's still on, if he could put it in now that you've called the vote, if you could just say aye or nay now that you've called the vote, I think that would make his vote count. That's the best way, I think.
You're voting yes?
I voted yes. Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to vote yes. So not to delegitimize Tim's vote, but there is a majority without Tim's vote. So
just wanted to give him the option.
I appreciate that. Tim, if you're listening, Tim, chat away, reaffirm.
I think he was on, but then disconnected.
Okay.
I saw his phone on there.
Tim would like to make a motion for rural broadband before we adjourn. Okay, motion carries.
Tim did respond again.
Excellent, thank you. Tim was affirmative again. Motion carries. So that is the end of our meeting, which will make everyone sad. But I do, Superintendent Gronseth, I think it would be good to check in Thursday, February 11th at 6:30 for, enough time to hear any updates. And we appreciate all the work that has gone into this. And I think our request for more work isn't questioning the plan. I don't want to speak for other board members, but the motion did pass. It's acknowledging that this is such a changing situation that having a little bit additional time to discuss it might yield some new opportunities to phase in that return to in-person learning.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Keith. Thanks to all the administrators. Thank you for our public comment tonight. Thank you very much, board members. I think this is without a doubt the hardest year to be a school board member in the history of the school district. And that goes back to the actual night that Lincoln was assassinated. That was our first St. Peter's School Board meeting, was that same day that Lincoln was assassinated. So we've gone through a lot, and this year will certainly go down as one of the most important and one of the most difficult. So with that, I will read our upcoming meetings that we just talked about. February 11th at 6:30 p.m. We do have a calendar committee meeting tomorrow, February 2nd, 3 p.m. in the St. Peter Middle School, room 124. We have a policy review committee meeting Friday, February 5th at 8 a.m. in St. Peter Middle School, room 124. We have an instructional program committee Wednesday, February 10th at 11 a.m. And the regular school board meeting will be February 18th, which is a Thursday due to the Monday holiday, at 6:30 p.m. And with that, motion to adjourn would be welcomed by all.
Stewie will make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Tracy. Vicky seconds. All right. Tim probably would chat yes. Vicky?
Yes. Hager, yes.
Drew?
Dixon, aye.
Dr. Soderlund?
Soderlund, aye.
Thank you. Tracy?
Stewie, aye.
John?
Carlson, aye.
Leonard, aye. Unanimous agreement in adjourning. Thank you, everybody.